Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are stepping into a realm that remains, largely invisible to the average person.
Yeah, completely invisible to most of us.
Right. But it actually functions as the absolute backbone of global commerce. We are examining the intricate, highly regulated world of global maritime shipping.
And we have some incredible source material to help us do that today.
We really do. We aren't looking at a published book or some academic white paper. Instead, we've gained access to an internal, highly strategic presentation deck. It was created by an operational control company called Com360.
Which is such a rare and revealing look into the executive mindset of this industry. I mean, this material isn't designed for public consumption at all.
No, not at all.
It is engineered specifically for high-level maritime executives, so people like fleet directors, technical superintendents, and QHSE leaders, which stands for Quality, Health, Safety, and Environment.
Exactly.
These are the individuals tasked with orchestrating the safe movement of massive fleets across the world's oceans.
And the mission of our deep dive today for you listening is to explore a profound operational paradox at the heart of this industry. We're going to look at why one of the most physically massive, heavily regulated, and technologically advanced global networks on the planet, why it still relies almost entirely on paper clipboards to function.
Yeah, it sounds crazy when you say it out loud.
It really does. And crucially, we'll explore why fundamentally redesigning these hidden operational workflows is no longer just, an administrative convenience. It's an absolute necessity for global safety and operational viability.
What's fascinating here is the stark contrast between the hardware and the administrative software of these vessels.
Yeah, let's talk about that hardware first.
Right, because when we think of a modern commercial megaship, we are looking at a marvel of engineering. You have vessels equipped with dynamic positioning, automated thrusters, satellite-linked ECDIS navigation systems, advanced environmental scrubbers.
Multi-million-dollar tech.
Exactly. Yet the diagnostic verification for those exact systems, the human reporting of their status, is frequently being recorded by a chief engineer on a wet, grease-stained clipboard.
It's an incredible operational paradox. I mean, imagine you're on a billion-dollar sci-fi spaceship, right?
Okay.
And the lead mechanic is still walking around the engine room making notes on a soggy notepad. That's essentially what is happening here. And the source material outlines the sheer volume of these daily procedures.
Which are massive.
Yeah, they aren't trivial tasks. They are the foundation of maritime governance. We're talking about critical engine room maintenance checks, complex cargo operation verifications, and permit-to-work procedures.
Yeah, the permit to work is a big one.
Which were required when a crew member has to execute a high-risk task, like hot welding near combustible materials. You also have environmental compliance monitoring, daily safety briefings, and toolbox talks where the crew aligns on the specific risks of the day's operations.
And this is happening continuously. You have dozens of these workflows executed every single day, and they are replicated across a global fleet of perhaps hundreds of ships, spanning multiple time zones and hostile marine environments.
All on paper.
Mostly on paper, yeah. The maritime industry has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into high-tech fleet management software and bridge navigation, but the actual execution at the deck level, the way a crew member documents a safety check, remains wildly fragmented and stuck decades in the past.
Which brings us to what the Com360 material describes as a Frankenstein tech stack. It's a complete operational bottleneck. Let's walk through how this actually works in practice.
Yeah, let's look at the reality on board.
How does a crew member currently report vital safety or operational data from the engine room back to the corporate office?
Well, in many fleets, it's a shockingly disjointed process. A crew member might identify an issue, say, a microfracture on a pressure valve.
Okay, microfracture.
They fill out a paper inspection form, but they might also take a photo of the fracture on their personal smartphone.
Just on their own phone.
Yeah. Then they send that photo to their technical superintendent via a standard consumer messaging app like WhatsApp.
Wow.
Meanwhile, the paper form gets manually entered into an offline Excel spreadsheet at the end of the day.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you are a fleet manager sitting in an office in Singapore or London, how do you even process that?
It's nearly impossible.
You're receiving formal documentation via an emailed Excel file, but the real-time visual evidence is buried in a WhatsApp thread.
You struggle to process it, and that is where the systemic risk really lies. The domino effect of this manual workflow is severe. You instantly introduce delayed reporting, incomplete documentation and human error through manual data entry.
Right, because someone has to type all that back in.
Exactly. Someone in a shore-based office eventually has to read that email, look at that WhatsApp photo, and manually retype the findings into the company's central ERP system.
But that's redundant work.
And it takes time. By the time that data is centralized, analyzed, and flagged as a critical risk, 48 to 72 hours might have passed.
And in the maritime world, 72 hours is an absolute eternity. A microfracture can become a catastrophic failure in a fraction of that time.
Precisely. This cascade of fragmented communication creates what the deck calls the operational visibility gap.
The operational visibility gap.
Fleet managers desperately need clear, unified operational visibility across their entire fleet to make strategic decisions. But because the connective tissue between the ship and the shore is made of paper forms, disconnected spreadsheets, and chat apps, shore management is entirely disconnected from the real-time physical reality of the vessel.
They are essentially managing the fleet while looking in the rearview mirror.
That's exactly it.
And the stakes for closing that visibility gap are incredibly high, not just for internal efficiency, but because of the massive external regulatory pressure on this industry.
The compliance side is huge.
It is. The material details the intense framework of international laws these ships must navigate. We are talking about SOLAS, which is the baseline international treaty dedicated to the safety of life at sea, and MARIPOL, which strictly governs marine pollution prevention.
And then you have the International Maritime Organization, or IMO guidelines, layering on top of that.
Right. And these aren't just industry suggestions. They are rigorous, non-negotiable international laws.
And enforcement is strict. Really strict.
Yeah.
When a vessel pulls into a port, whether that's Rotterdam, Los Angeles, or Shanghai, they are subject to port state control inspections.
Yep.
The authorities board the vessel, and they don't just ask the captain if everything is functioning properly.
They don't just take their word for it.
No, they demand immediate structured proof.
Right. They need to see the historical maintenance records, the environmental discharge logs, the incident reports, the safety protocols. So if a port inspector wants to verify the testing of a lifeboat release mechanism from 4 months ago, and that record is buried in a misplaced binder in the ship's office, what actually happens?
The consequences are immediate and severe. If a ship cannot produce the required compliance documentation, it can literally be detained in port.
Just stuck there.
Stuck. And a detained commercial vessel costs the operating company thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars a day in demurrage and lost charter rates. Paper documentation radically increases the vulnerability to missing records and delayed audit preparation.
It transforms what should be a routine regulatory audit into a frantic, chaotic scavenger hunt.
Exactly.
But beyond the financial penalties of an audit, there is a much deeper layer to this issue, specifically regarding safety culture. The material places a heavy emphasis on something called a near miss.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, a near miss is perhaps the most critical metric in proactive risk management.
Can you define what a near miss is in this context?
Sure. A near miss is an event that did not result in injury, illness, or damage, but it had the potential to do so. Think of a scenario where an engineer bypasses a lockout or tagout procedure on a piece of heavy machinery just to save some time.
Okay.
No one gets hurt, the machinery doesn't break, but the procedural failure occurred.
And in a healthy safety culture, that procedural failure needs to be documented so the organization can learn from it and correct the behavior before it becomes a fatality.
Exactly. Near misses are the leading indicators of operational risk, but manual reporting fundamentally destroys the feedback loop required to track them.
Because it's too hard to report.
Way too hard. If reporting that near miss requires an engineer to walk up 3 decks, find a specific paper form, fill it out by hand, and submit it to a supervisor, the psychological and administrative friction is simply too high. It goes unreported.
The crew just moves on with their day.
They do. And even if they do report it, it just becomes an isolated piece of paper sitting on a desk somewhere. There is no automated follow-up tracking, no data aggregation to show fleet-wide trends.
So you're flying blind.
You are. You cannot prevent a future disaster if the leading indicators of risk are obscured by inefficient administrative processes. The paper system actively suppresses the data needed to keep crews safe.
Which highlights an incredibly frustrating irony regarding the crew themselves. You have these highly trained mariners individuals who have spent years at maritime academies mastering celestial navigation, fluid dynamics, complex marine engineering.
True professionals.
Right. They are deployed to operate multi-million-dollar assets and ensure physical safety. Yet they find themselves relegated to being glorified data entry clerks.
It is an enormous administrative burden, and it is a major friction point in crew welfare. But from an operational standpoint, this cognitive load is genuinely dangerous.
How so?
Well, human attention is a finite resource in a high-stress environment. Every hour a chief officer spends formatting an Excel spreadsheet to report a routine cargo inspection is an hour their attention is diverted from the physical environment of the ship.
It pulls their focus away from the actual heavy machinery and the dynamic risks around them.
Exactly. This administrative workload actively degrades operational efficiency. It forces the crew to prioritize compliance documentation over actual operational execution.
They're managing the paperwork, not the ship.
Right. And the goal should be to align the two so that doing the job correctly automatically generates the compliance data without extra administrative overhead.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because you listening would assume the obvious fix is just to buy some software. Send a bunch of iPads to the ship, digitize the forms, and you are done. Right.
You'd think so.
But Com360 takes a remarkably different stance in this deck. They emphatically state that they are not a software vendor. They position themselves as an operational control partner.
This raises an important question. Why make that distinction?
Yeah, why not just sell the software?
Because simply digitizing a bad paper process doesn't solve the underlying problem. If you take a flawed, inefficient paper checklist and turn it into a digital PDF on a tablet, you haven't improved the operation.
No, you haven't.
You have just moved a bad workflow onto a screen.
Right, you still have unstructured, isolated data. You are just tapping it with a stylus instead of writing with a pen.
Precisely. The core philosophy here is not digitization. It is workflow redesign. It's about capturing frontline activities through highly structured, standardized processes.
Making sure it's done the same way every time.
Exactly. The goal is to ensure that whether a vessel is navigating the freezing temperatures of the Baltic Sea or the high humidity of the Strait of Malacca, the engine inspection is executed and reported in the exact same structured format, instantly feeding into a centralized database.
And to ground this in reality, the source material explicitly identifies what they call the 7 critical workflows every fleet should digitize. It's a strategic roadmap for moving away from paper.
And looking at that list, you can really see how comprehensive this redesign needs to be. It covers everything from safety inspection reporting and equipment maintenance checks to incident and hazard reporting.
It also includes permit-to-work management, which we discussed earlier, alongside cargo operation verification, environmental compliance monitoring, and crew toolbox talks.
Let's isolate just one of those to see the impact. Permit-to-work management.
Okay.
In a paper-based system, getting authorization for a hazardous task involves a physical piece of paper that needs multiple physical signatures from different officers on board.
You physically have to track them down.
Right. It's slow and prone to oversight. When you redesign that into a structured digital workflow, the system can automatically verify that the crew member has the right certifications, ensure that conflicting permits aren't issued simultaneously in the same area, and instantly log the approval with a timestamp.
That's a huge shift.
It is. You are moving from a passive record to an active safety control mechanism.
You are fundamentally changing how the work is executed, not just how it's recorded.
Right.
It forces operational discipline across the board.
Absolutely.
And speaking of discipline, there is a fascinating layer to this source material regarding how Com360 actually communicates this massive paradigm shift to a very traditional, conservative industry.
Oh, the design of the deck itself.
Yes. The presentation includes explicit visual design guidelines for its own internal use, which is so interesting to see.
It is a brilliant study in executive psychology and change management. The maritime industry is notoriously resistant to disruption.
I can imagine.
If you walk into a boardroom of fleet directors pitching a Silicon Valley-style move fast and break things software platform, you will be shown the door immediately.
Completely. And the Com360 deck reflects that perfectly.
Yeah.
The internal instructions mandate a very strict, dark maritime theme.
Very serious tones.
Yeah. The approved color palette is restricted to navy blue, white, light blue, and gray. It projects authority, stability, and structure. There are no flashy gradients or neon colors here at all.
The iconography is equally deliberate. They utilize very specific, grounded visuals: a ship, a structured checklist, a safety hard hat, an inspection clipboard, a global fleet.
Right. It visually signals to the maritime executive.
Yeah.
We understand the physical reality of your world. We know you are dealing with steel, salt water, and heavy machinery, not just abstract cloud computing.
It speaks their language.
It really does. It bridges the gap between high-level digital transformation and the gritty reality of maritime operations.
Which is how you build the trust required to push for systemic change.
So what does this all mean? When the pitch is over and a fleet actually commits to redesigning these workflows, what is the ultimate strategic outcome for the ship owners?
The material synthesizes the return on investment into three core strategic pillars. First, you achieve operational discipline.
Yeah, operational discipline.
The crew has a clear, standardized, and actively guided way to execute their daily duties without the cognitive load of managing chaotic paperwork. Second, you achieve compliance readiness.
Which solves that port inspection nightmare.
Exactly. The data required by SOLAS, MARPOL, and Port State Control is instantly accessible, structured, and historically preserved.
Making those port audits a seamless process rather than a crisis.
And third, perhaps most importantly, you achieve management visibility. That massive operational blind spot we talked about is eliminated.
The gap is closed.
Shore management transforms from being a reactive entity, waiting days for WhatsApp photos and Excel spreadsheets, to having near real-time, structured insight into the health and safety of every vessel in their global fleet. They gain true operational control.
It is a profound shift in how complex logistics operate. And as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to frame this for you, the listener.
Yeah, let's bring it back home.
It is highly likely that you are not currently managing a global fleet of commercial shipping vessels. But the core insights from this COM360 operational deck map perfectly onto almost any complex organization or project.
They really do.
It forces a very uncomfortable but necessary question. Where are the paper clipboards and messaging app photos in your own operations? Where are you relying on fragmented manual reporting that is creating a dangerous operational visibility gap?
That is the real takeaway.
Because as we've seen today, closing that gap isn't just about downloading a new app, it requires the discipline to fundamentally redesign how your workflows are structured.
And if you allow me to take that concept one step further into the future,
Oh, please do.
we have spent our time exploring how redesigning these maritime workflows creates structured, real-time data to give shore management a clear picture of the present. But imagine the next evolutionary leap.
Okay.
Consider what happens when all of those leading indicators, every near miss, every toolbox talk, every microfracture recorded in a maintenance check is transformed from an isolated, delayed paper form into a massive, standardized, continuous global data set.
An ocean of operational data, basically.
Precisely. What happens when we apply predictive machine learning to that structured data?
Oh, wow.
We are looking at a horizon where the next era of maritime safety isn't just about efficiently reporting what went wrong yesterday. It will be about fleets that can autonomously predict and prevent their own accidents.
Just by recognizing the patterns.
Recognizing complex patterns of equipment degradation or procedural failure before the human crew even perceives the hazard. By solving the paper problem today, the industry is building the foundation to literally predict the future of its own operations.
A brilliant thought to end on, from the humble, grease-stained clipboard to the frontier of predictive, autonomous safety. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you walk away looking at the hidden systems, the manual workflows, and the operational blind spots around you with a sharper, more analytical eye. Keep questioning the invisible structures that keep our world running, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.